When I was 24, I ended up in urgent care after nearly collapsing at work. That's not how this story starts, but it's where it started to become impossible to ignore. Before that, I was always the one brushing things off, always the one trying not to make waves. I'd keep quiet when I was left out of family plans. I'd make excuses for my sister's jokes, and I'd convince myself that I was just being too sensitive. My name's Steven. I've always been the dependable one, the kid who never got into trouble, the one who fixed the printer when it jammed, and the one who always picked up the phone, no matter how late. My parents used to say they were proud of me. At least, I think they did. It's been a while since I've actually heard those words. My younger sister, Marissa, was the favorite. It wasn't even subtle. She was 2 years younger, always louder, always the center of attention, and somehow always the victim, even when she was the one flipping out. When she screamed at me during Thanksgiving dinner for correcting her tone, my mom looked at me and said, "Why do you always provoke her?" Marissa didn't have a job for the better part of a year, and when I asked her, just once, if she planned on pitching in for groceries since she was staying at our parents' house rent-free, she told our dad I was attacking her. He sat me down and told me to be more understanding because not everyone has it together like you. That's the line that stuck with me. Not everyone has it together like you. It sounded like praise at first, but the way he said it, it was more like a command. Like my role in the family was to keep it together no matter what. To not complain. To not need anything. To let them lean on me, but never lean back. And I guess I played along with that for years, because the idea of not being needed scared me more than being invisible. But you can only run on empty for so long. I had just started a new job at a tech support company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid decently and had health insurance, which felt like gold after 2 years of juggling freelance gigs with zero benefits. I worked long hours, sometimes 10, 11 hours a day. Nothing crazy for corporate life, but the environment was intense. High turnover, constant performance metrics, and this unspoken pressure to always be on. I didn't mind at first. I liked being good at something. I liked the structure. But I also started waking up with headaches. Then came the stomach problems. Then the dizziness. I chalked it up to stress and kept going. The day I nearly passed out, I was midway through a call with a client who couldn't figure out why his router wasn't connecting. I remember hearing my own voice slur, and then the room just tilted, like someone had yanked the floor to one side. I dropped my headset and stumbled into the break room, where I apparently collapsed onto the couch. One of my coworkers, bless her, I still don't know her name, called the on-site nurse, who called an ambulance because my blood pressure was dangerously low. I didn't faint completely, but everything felt like it was underwater. My limbs were heavy. My head throbbed. I barely remember the ambulance ride, just that I kept thinking, don't call mom and dad. Don't make a big deal. They called anyway, or tried to. The nurse later told me she tried both my parents' numbers. No answer. Then she tried my emergency contact, which, stupidly, was still listed as Marissa. Also no answer. They eventually gave up and just wrote down "no contact reached" on the paperwork. I spent 3 hours at urgent care, hooked up to fluids, half awake, getting poked and prodded and told I needed to see a specialist. Could be autoimmune, the doctor said. Could be chronic fatigue. We won't know until more tests come back. I didn't even text anyone about it. I didn't want to deal with the pity. I didn't want to hear, "Why didn't you say something?" from the same people who never really listened. So I just went home. I took the next day off work and slept. For 16 hours straight. The day after that, I forced myself to shower, made toast, and turned on my phone, which had died sometime during the night. As soon as it powered on, I saw the photo. Marissa had posted a story on Instagram. Her at some trendy outdoor restaurant. Glass of wine in hand. Laughing. The caption read, "Finally a calm evening, clinking glasses." Posted the same night I was in urgent care. I stared at it for a long time. Then I checked the timestamp. 8:42 p.m. I had been in a hospital gown, trying to keep my eyes open, hooked up to 4 fluids, at that exact moment. I didn't comment. I didn't text her. I didn't expect anything, honestly. Maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the fact that she didn't care, but that it didn't even occur to her that she should. I turned my phone back off and went back to sleep. I stayed offline for 2 more days. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to explain. I didn't even want to answer my boss's texts, even though they were kind. I just wanted silence. When I finally turned my phone on again, I had 27 missed calls. Mostly from my dad. Some from my mom. None from Marissa. And one text from Dad. It just said, "We need to talk. It's important." I stared at the screen, completely blank. No context. No, "Are you okay?" No, "What happened?" Just, "We need to talk." Like I was in trouble. Like I'd done something wrong by disappearing for 2 days after nearly passing out at work. Like I owed them an explanation. I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I sat there in my apartment, the windows still closed, my head still pounding, and I just let the silence stretch. I started wondering what the call was about. Was it guilt? Was it anger? Was it some kind of family drama that had nothing to do with me? Or maybe it was about the will. I hadn't thought about that in years. But suddenly, I remembered the conversation. A late night 5 years ago. Me, home from college. My dad, 2 drinks in. "If anything ever happens to me," he said, "you're the responsible one. You'll know what to do." And at the time, I'd believed him. I didn't know that conversation would come back to haunt me, or that it was connected to something much deeper, much older than I realized at the time. I didn't know that silence, my silence, would become the first domino in something much, much bigger. But I was about to find out. The phone rang again that evening. I let it go to voicemail. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted to hear if there was any urgency in my dad's voice. Maybe I just didn't want to hear disappointment. The voicemail was only 7 seconds long. "Steven, call me back. It's important." Still no "Are you okay?" Still no acknowledgement that I'd been off the grid. I stared at the screen, waiting for another message. Nothing. I finally caved and called back the next morning. Not because I wanted to. Because I needed to know. Something was off, and I could feel it. Maybe it was the way my body still felt heavy, like I was swimming through glue. Or maybe it was instinct, that little gut feeling I'd been trained to ignore my whole life. The one that said, "You're being sidelined again. You're about to be left out of something that involves you." He picked up on the second ring. "Steven," he said, and it wasn't warm. It wasn't cold, either. It was flat. Businesslike. "Glad you're all right. Listen, we need to talk about the house." There was no pause. No space to breathe. "No, what happened to you?" "Nothing. Just the house." I blinked. "What about it?" "I assumed your mother told you." "She didn't." A sigh. Like I was the one being difficult. "Your grandfather's lake house. We're selling it." I sat up. "Wait, what?" "I thought it was split between you and Uncle Nathan." "It was. But Nathan signed over his half to Marissa. As a wedding gift." My heart stopped. Wedding? She got engaged last week. She wanted to surprise everyone at the dinner Friday night. "You know, the one you didn't show up to." The words hit like a slap. I didn't show up. Like I had casually ditched a birthday party. Like I hadn't been in urgent care, getting 4 fluids, and waiting for blood test results. "I was in the hospital," I said carefully. "I passed out at work." "The nurse called you." No one answered. There was silence on the line. Then, "Yeah. Well, your mom said you were probably exaggerating. She thought maybe you just wanted attention." Something in my chest folded in half. I didn't tell her anything. She said you were always dramatic about health stuff. I stood up without realizing it, pacing now. My hands were shaking. I hadn't cried yet, but the pressure was building behind my eyes like a dam about to burst. "You didn't think to check in on me?" I said, my voice rising. 27 missed calls after ignoring me for 2 days? You think that cancels it out? "Steven," he said, the tone he used when I was being too emotional. "Can we focus?" "The house." "No," I snapped. "You don't get to steamroll me right now. You don't get to act like nothing happened." "I'm not. You didn't call. You didn't text. And now you're telling me the only family property we had left is being sold, and Marissa's getting half." "It's not like that," he said. "She's getting married. She needs a foundation. You know how expensive starting a life is. And I don't. You're single," he said flatly. "You've got your job. You don't need it the same way." I stopped dead. I could feel the words bouncing around in my skull, too loud to ignore. "You're single. You don't need it. You don't need." That was it, wasn't it? I was always the one who didn't need support, didn't need help, didn't need a share of the inheritance, didn't need a call when I was in urgent care. I was the safety net, not the one being caught. "How much is she getting?" I asked. A pause. "Well, if the sale goes through, her share will be around 120,000. You'd get about 10. I laughed. I actually laughed, but it didn't feel funny. It felt like something breaking open. 10,000. "For renovations," he said. "You never contributed to upkeep." I was a kid. I yelled. "I painted the deck one summer." Marissa didn't even lift a brush. That was different. How? She was still in school. She was 19. She had anxiety back then, he said, like it was a trump card. We didn't want to push her too hard. I sat back down slowly. My heart was pounding. So let me get this straight. I nearly collapse at work. I go to the hospital. No one answers. 2 days later, you call me to say that Marissa is getting a wedding gift worth 6 figures from a house that was meant to be shared. And I'm getting a tenth of that because I'm too healthy and single to matter. You're twisting things, he said tightly. I didn't want this to be a fight. Yeah, I said, my voice hollow. That would be inconvenient for you. He hung up without another word. The silence in my apartment afterward was suffocating. I sat there for what felt like an hour, phone in my lap, trying to process it. Not just the betrayal, but the sheer indifference. The way they'd written me out of the equation like I was some distant cousin, not their son. Not the kid who mowed that lake house lawn every summer. Not the one who kept their tech running, who picked Marissa up from college when she was too anxious to take the bus, who loaned mom money when her car broke down, and never once asked for a thank you. And now? I was an afterthought. Marissa got the house. Marissa got the money. Marissa got the attention. And I got a voicemail. I didn't talk to them for 3 days after that. Not out of spite. I just couldn't. Every time I tried to draft a message, my fingers froze. What could I even say? That I was hurt? That I felt disposable? That I was drowning in exhaustion, barely eating, and still hadn't gotten my blood work results back because I'd been too overwhelmed to call the clinic? They wouldn't hear it. Or worse, they'd hear it and dismiss it. So I shut down. I didn't tell them about the abnormal results. I didn't tell them the doctor now suspected an autoimmune disorder. Something chronic, something that would explain the joint pain, the fatigue, the dizzy spells. Something that made it clear I hadn't been dramatic. Instead, I got a text from my mom. Hey sweetie, hope you're feeling better. Can you come by next weekend and help Marissa with her save the dates? She's swamped. I told her you'd be a lifesaver. No question, no check-in. Just, here's what you're going to do for her. I didn't respond. The next day, Marissa sent me a voice message. Her voice was light, almost giddy. Hey, so I know you're probably, busy or whatever, but could you please come by Saturday? We're doing a whole family thing, and I really need help setting up the Canva templates. Also, Dad said he'd give you your house cut in cash if you came. So incentive. Like I was a dog, being bribed with a treat. I finally replied. One sentence. I'm not available. The response was instant. Wow. Okay. You don't have to be a jerk about it. I put my phone down. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw it at the wall. But I didn't. I just sat back, closed my eyes, and let the heat simmer. That was the moment it changed. Not because I suddenly had some master plan. Not because I wanted revenge. But because something in me, something that had been stretched and twisted for years, finally snapped. They'd spent my whole life telling me I was stronger, smarter, more mature, as an excuse to neglect me. They weaponized my stability. They used my silence as permission. And now, they were about to find out what happened when I stopped being silent. But I didn't lash out. No, I waited. Because if they were going to treat me like I was irrelevant, then I'd show them just how much they'd underestimated me. And the first step was calling Uncle Nathan. The call to Uncle Nathan wasn't easy to make. It sat in my contacts like a relic. I hadn't spoken to him in almost 2 years, not out of anger, just distance. After Grandpa passed, Nathan sort of disappeared from the family orbit. I'd heard whispers from my dad about him losing his way, about how he was letting the house go, about debts and missed payments and poor judgment. But none of it ever came from Nathan directly. It was all filtered through my parents. So I did what I'd been conditioned to do. I believed them. But something about the way Dad said he signed over his half to Marissa didn't sit right. It was too clean, too easy. Nathan wasn't the most responsible guy, sure, but he loved that lake house. He and Grandpa built the dock together. I'd seen the photos. Him just giving it up as a wedding gift to Marissa? That didn't track. Not unless there was more to the story. So I dialed. It rang 5 times before a raspy voice picked up. Steven, hey, I said, suddenly nervous. Yeah, sorry for the out-of-the-blue call. Do you have a second? There was a pause, then a chuckle. Of course I do. I always got a second for the only person in this family who used to actually help me sand the boat shed. I smiled. It was faint but real. We talked for almost an hour. I didn't even bring up the house at first. I asked how he was, what he'd been up to. He told me about the small repair business he was trying to run, the trouble he'd had during the pandemic, the knee surgery he'd put off for too long. His voice was tired, but kind, like someone who'd weathered too much, but still looked for reasons to be decent. Finally, I asked, "So, I heard you signed your half of the lake house over to Marissa?" There was a long pause. "She told you that?" "Dad did." Another pause. This one felt heavier. "Stephen," he said slowly, "I didn't sign it over to Marissa. I sold my share. To your father. Last year. I was behind on medical bills. He made me an offer." My stomach twisted. "And he told you it was going to her?" "He told me it was staying in the family," he said. "He said he wanted to preserve the place. Keep it safe. Said it was sentimental. I even gave him a discount because of that." "How much did he pay you?" Nathan told me. It was significantly lower than what he'd told me Marissa's share was worth now. He'd underpaid Nathan, bought the house cheap, and now was planning to give it to Marissa at more than double the value. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in my dark living room, phone clutched in both hands, and let the realization wash over me. It wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just favoritism. It was manipulation. It was calculated. They knew I wouldn't push back, that I'd accept the scraps, that I'd stay quiet and keep showing up like the loyal foot soldier I'd always been. Because I didn't make drama. I didn't stir the pot. I handled things. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the sun rose. The next morning, I called my doctor and confirmed the diagnosis. Autoimmune. Chronic. Manageable, but serious. The flare-ups explained the fatigue, the dizziness, the brain fog. It was real. The part of me that still hoped they'd say, "It's just burnout," shriveled up and died. This was going to be my life now. Measured energy, monitored diet, new medication, and flare-ups I couldn't predict. I texted my boss, took a leave of absence. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't ask permission from my family. I didn't inform them. I just stopped. The first week was dark. I'd never been that still before. No calls, no work, no errands. Just me, my couch, and a growing understanding that my entire identity, the dependable one, the strong one, the fixer, had been built on sand. I had nothing to offer them now. And without that, who was I? The only person who reached out was Uncle Nathan. He texted me a few days later. "If you ever want to come up to the lake before they sell it, let me know. I'd like to say goodbye too." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I packed a bag and drove up Friday morning. The lake house looked exactly the same. Sun-bleached siding, crooked mailbox, the faded "Welcome Fisherman" sign still hanging from the porch beam. But it felt quieter, empty in a way I couldn't explain. I half expected to see Grandpa in his chair, whittling or pretending to read while secretly dozing off. Nathan met me in the driveway. His limp was worse than I remembered, but he smiled like seeing me gave him 10 years back. We didn't talk much that day. We just existed. Ate lunch on the dock. Watched the water. I even helped him clean out the tool shed, sorting through a mountain of old fishing gear, warped photo albums, and rusted tools. We found a coffee can full of bottle caps that Grandpa used to use as makeshift poker chips. I almost cried. That night, Nathan poured us both a drink. Ginger ale for me, whiskey for him. We sat in the living room with the lights low, the old fan rattling in the corner. "You know," he said, "your dad was always good at spinning things." I glanced at him. "He made me think I was the weak one," Nathan continued. "Said I wasn't contributing. Said he was cleaning up my mess. And maybe some of that was true. I wasn't perfect, but he always made sure he came out looking like the savior." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, that sounds familiar." We didn't say much after that, but I slept better that night than I had in weeks. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Marissa. "Dad said you've been talking to Uncle Nathan? Why are you stirring things up? We're trying to have a peaceful wedding season, and you're making it about you again." There it was, the mask slipping. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching. Property law, inheritance transfers, title records. I even emailed a lawyer my friend had recommended years ago when I was thinking of moving out of state. I asked about the legality of buying out an heir at an unfair market rate, about leveraging emotional pressure during a sale, about what my rights might be. The lawyer didn't promise anything, but she agreed to look at the documents if I could get them. I started piecing together a timeline. A paper trail, emails, text messages, old photos showing me doing repairs on the house. Anything that proved I had a history of involvement. Anything that contradicted the story Dad was trying to spin. that I was just some detached son with no stake. I felt like I was building a case for my own existence. And in the process, something shifted. I started waking up with purpose again, not to please anyone, not to earn points, but because I had something to fight for. Not the house, not the money, me, my voice, my value. I started journaling every day, therapy style, just for myself. At first it was messy, angry, full of words I'd never say out loud. But over time, it turned into something else. A record, a mirror, proof that I was changing. I started cooking again. Simple stuff, grilled chicken, rice, frozen veggies. I even went on short walks, slowly rebuilding my energy. The meds were helping. So was the rest. I unfollowed Marissa on Instagram. Blocked her, actually. Deleted the group chat my parents had created years ago. I didn't announce it. I just left. Quietly. A week later, my dad emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. Subject line, disappointed. The message was short. He said he heard I was digging into things. That I was causing confusion by contacting Nathan. That I was jeopardizing the sale. That this wasn't how families should treat each other. No mention of my health. No question about my well-being. Just guilt. Wrapped in formality. I didn't reply, but I printed it out and added it to my growing folder. Every passive-aggressive message. Every deflection. Every slip-up. It all went into the folder. Not because I knew exactly what I'd do with it, but because I wanted a record. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That I had tried. That their version of me, the selfish, dramatic, emotionally fragile one, wasn't real. The next time my mom texted, it was a photo of a venue. Marissa's rehearsal dinner spot. Isn't it gorgeous? No context. No hope you're well. Just a pretty building with string lights and stone walkways and a price tag I could practically smell through the phone. I didn't respond. That weekend, Nathan offered me something unexpected. I've got a copy of the deed, he said. The old one. From before your dad bought me out. You want it? I said yes. He handed me a folder. Inside was the original title. My grandfather's name. 2 co-owners listed, my dad and Nathan. And in the back, a handwritten letter. Folded twice, yellowed at the edges. To my boys, it started. My hands shook as I read it. It was from Grandpa, written a year before he died. He talked about the house. About how it wasn't worth much in money, but that it was full of memories. He asked them not to sell it. To keep it in the family. To share it. To let it be a place where the next generation could come, fish off the dock, play cards on rainy nights. There was no legal weight to it. But emotionally, it was a bombshell. I copied it, filed it, and somewhere deep inside, I started to form a plan. The wedding invitation came in a gold-embossed envelope like it thought it was royalty. My name was written in this dainty cursive font, like it had been hand-lettered by someone who didn't know me at all, which was fitting because that's exactly how it felt reading it. It wasn't even addressed to Stephen and guest. Just me. Solo. A formality. A polite obligation. The kind of invitation you send because you have to, not because you want the person there. It was Marissa's way of saying, see, I included you, while silently praying I wouldn't show up. The front of the card had this pastel watercolor print of a vineyard. Apparently the venue was some overpriced winery on the edge of town. Inside it said, you are joyfully invited to celebrate the union of Marissa Elaine Grant and Tyler James Menzies. Saturday, June 15th, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Lavender Hills Estate. Reception to follow. Formal attire requested. And at the very bottom, in smaller print, we kindly ask for no surprises on our special day. I almost laughed out loud at that last line. No surprises. That wasn't a warning to guests. That was a message to me. They were scared I'd do something. That I'd show up and cause a scene. That I'd drag my drama into their carefully curated fairy tale. That I'd be inconvenient. I set the card down and let the silence stretch. For the first time since this whole thing began, I wasn't hurt. I wasn't even angry. I was ready. I already had the folder. The property history. The emails. The message from my dad calling me disappointing. The deed from Nathan. And most importantly, Grandpa's letter. The emotional nuke they didn't know existed. But revenge isn't just about evidence. It's about timing, precision, emotional leverage. The perfect stage. And what better stage than the one they built themselves? Their wedding was a circus. It wasn't just an event, it was a production. I knew this because Marissa, for all her hatred of me, couldn't resist the urge to brag. She'd been posting updates online like a countdown to the apocalypse. One post was a photo of the wedding planner's leather binder, with the caption, "If you know, you know. We don't do basic." Another was a shot of a dress fitting, multiple bridesmaids posing around her like she was royalty. And then there was the engagement shoot. A dozen filtered pictures of her and Tyler standing in a wheat field, gazing into each other's eyes like they were reenacting a perfume ad. The caption? "After everything, we made it. Loyalty wins." Loyalty. That was cute. Tyler, by the way, was a finance bro with a trust fund and a man bun. We'd met once. He shook my hand without making eye contact and said something about passive income before wandering off to ask my dad about gifting loopholes. Real charmer. The wedding wasn't just a milestone for them. It was a statement, a power move, a declaration that they were the future of the family, that Marissa was the golden child, that I was the past, the quiet, awkward one who didn't know how to play the game. And that made it the perfect place to flip the board. But first, I needed to understand what I was walking into. So I started watching. Quietly. I made a new Instagram account and followed the wedding photographer. I followed the venue, the planner, even the florist. You'd be amazed how many behind-the-scenes photos wedding vendors post without thinking. Table setups, seating charts, sneak peeks of the schedule. I gathered it all. Turns out, the rehearsal dinner was scheduled for the night before the wedding, Friday, June 14th, at a boutique restaurant near downtown. Intimate. About 30 guests. Immediate family, bridal party, plus a few close friends. The kind of event where people gave toasts. That's when I knew. That's when the real plan started to form. I wasn't going to crash the wedding. I wasn't going to yell or flip a table or stand up during the vows and object. That's not who I am. That's not what this story deserved. No, I was going to get invited to the rehearsal dinner, and I was going to let them hand me the microphone. But first, I needed leverage. Enter the will. I still didn't know if Grandpa had ever updated it before he passed. I knew he'd written the letter, but if there was a formal document backing it up, and I could get my hands on it, that would change everything. So I reached out to his old lawyer, a man named Harold Kirkland. He'd handled the estate when Grandpa died, and I remembered attending the reading. I hadn't paid much attention back then, because I assumed it was all going to my dad and Nathan. I was barely 20 at the time. I told Kirkland who I was and asked if there had been any amendments to the will regarding the lake house. To my surprise, he called me back within the hour. "Yes," he said, his voice gravelly and sharp. "There was a revision. About a year before your grandfather passed." My heart kicked. He specified that he wanted the lake house to remain a shared family asset, not to be sold unless both parties agreed. He was very particular about that. Was that legally binding? It was, until both parties, your father and uncle, chose to override it during the transfer. They filed a joint motion to restructure the ownership. I advised against it, but they insisted. Did Marissa's name come up at all? No, he said firmly. Never. Your grandfather didn't even list her in that section. He wanted it to stay between his sons and, eventually, their children, plural. Not just her. Can I get a copy of that revision? I'll email it to you. Boom. That document, combined with the letter, proved intent. That Grandpa wanted the house to stay in the family, not to be sold off and turned into a wedding dowry. That Dad had gone against those wishes. And that I, as the other child in the line of inheritance, had a stake. I added the PDF to my folder. My collection was growing, like loading bullets into a magazine. Next, I called Uncle Nathan. "Hey," I said, "I need a favor." I explained the plan, the dinner, the speech. He didn't hesitate. "I'll get you on the list." Turns out, he was invited, reluctantly. My dad had kept him at arm's length, but couldn't completely uninvite his own brother, especially not after buying him out. So Nathan had a +1. "I'll say you're my guest," he said. "They'll hate it, but they won't say no." I thanked him, profusely. Then I got to work. I found an old binder from college, thick, black leather, barely used. I printed every document. Grandpa's letter, the revised will, photos of me repairing the dock as a teenager, screenshots of texts from my parents showing their indifference, every receipt, every inconsistency. And on the cover, I taped a photo of the house. Not for them, for me, to remind myself what I was really doing this for. That week, I bought a new suit. Not flashy, just clean, dark blue, fitted. I got my hair trimmed. Shoes shined. I even rehearsed the speech. not to cause drama, but to tell the truth. Calmly, clearly, without apology. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to let their own actions hang in the air, and let the room decide who the villain was. The night of the rehearsal dinner arrived fast. Lavender Hills was as pretentious as the name suggested. Winding gravel driveway, fairy lights in the trees, valet parking even though it was barely a 10-minute walk from the city center. I arrived with Uncle Nathan. He wore a weathered gray blazer and smelled faintly of cigars. As we approached the entrance, I could already see the tension ripple. My dad's jaw tensed when he saw me. My mom blinked like she was seeing a ghost. Marissa actually dropped her champagne flute. But no one said a word. Because I was Nathan's guest. Because it was too late to stop me. Because cameras were flashing and appearances had to be kept. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just smiled, nodded, and made polite small talk with strangers while they tried to pretend I wasn't a live grenade. Dinner was held on a long, candlelit patio overlooking the vineyard. Speeches began with the maid of honor, Marissa's college roommate, who cried a little too hard. Then the best man, Tyler's business partner, who made a joke about crypto that no one laughed at. And then, Nathan stood up. "I just want to say a few words," he said, tapping his glass. "And then, my guest would like to say something as well." "Stephen." Marissa paled. My dad looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. I rose, slowly, folder in hand. And as I stepped forward, the entire table turned to watch. They had no idea what was coming. The air shifted the moment I stood. I felt it, that hush that falls over a room when something unscripted is about to happen. People who had barely glanced my way during dinner now turned in unison, wine glasses stilled mid-sip, eyes flicking between me and my family like they'd just realized there was another character in this play. A quiet one, but not anymore. I set the leather binder down on the corner of the table beside me, its weight making a soft thud. Marissa stiffened, clutching her wine glass like it might protect her. My mother's polite hostess smile strained at the edges. My father didn't move. He just stared, arms folded, mouth tight, like he already knew what was coming and was calculating how to spin it. I didn't touch the microphone. I didn't need it. "Hi," I began, voice steady, loud enough to carry but soft enough to force them to lean in. "Some of you know me. Some of you probably don't. I'm Stephen, Marissa's older brother, Nathan's nephew, son of that gentleman there." I gestured toward my dad, who still hadn't blinked. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I continued. "In fact, I almost didn't come. I wasn't invited by the bride or groom. I came as Uncle Nathan's guest. But I figured, what better time to speak about family than on the eve of a wedding?" I looked around the table. Some people were smiling nervously, others frozen, unsure if this was a toast or a trial. I've spent most of my life being quiet. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I thought that was what was expected of me. Keep your head down. Be dependable. Don't complain. Just help. Show up. Stay out of the spotlight. I let that sit for a beat. "But lately," I said, my voice cooling, "I've been thinking about what happens when you stay quiet too long. About how silence doesn't always keep the peace. Sometimes, it just lets people pretend nothing's wrong." Marissa's jaw tightened. I saw her whisper something to Tyler, who sat frozen beside her, eyes darting like he was looking for the emergency exit. I opened the binder. "I want to talk about the lake house." That got everyone's attention. My mother flinched. Marissa's knuckles went white. "It's a place most of you have probably seen in family photos. The dock, the old wooden swing, the grill that caught fire once during a 4th of July barbecue. That house was my grandfather's pride. It wasn't just property. It was the place he wanted us to come back to. The place we were supposed to share." I pulled out the first document. This is a copy of the original deed. It listed my dad and my uncle as co-owners. Equal parts. The way Grandpa wanted it. I lifted another sheet. This is a letter my grandfather wrote. Not legally binding, but clear. In it, he asked that the house never be sold, that it stay in the family, passed down and shared. He didn't mention Marissa by name. In fact, he didn't single out anyone. He believed in all of us. A quiet ripple ran down the table. Guests shifting in their chairs. A few whispering. I pulled out another document. This is a record of the sale. Uncle Nathan was struggling with medical debt. He sold his share to my father, believing it would stay in the family. He sold it below market value because he trusted that. I looked directly at my father now. But my dad didn't preserve the house. He flipped it, turned it into a gift. A six-figure wedding present. Not for the family. Not even split between siblings. Just handed to Marissa. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. I'm not mad you're getting married, I said, voice even. I'm not mad you're building a life. I'm mad because I was never part of the conversation. I was never even told. I was in urgent care the night this dinner was being planned. No one called. No one checked in. And then 2 days later, I get a message from my dad that says, "We need to talk." Like I was the problem. Tyler cleared his throat, trying to say something, but again, I didn't give them the space. "This," I said, lifting one final document, "is a revised clause from my grandfather's will, signed and filed a year before he died. It explicitly states the house was not to be sold unless both owners agreed, and that it should remain within the family for future generations. This revision was quietly overwritten when the title was transferred, without informing me, despite me being the only other direct heir." Dead silence. "Legally," I continued, "I may not have a clean claim, but morally, emotionally, I think everyone here knows what this is." I turned to Marissa. "You got a wedding gift funded by betrayal." She blinked, hard, like I'd slapped her. "I'm not here to ruin your wedding," I said. "I'm not here to throw a tantrum. I'm here to say that I'm done playing the quiet one. I'm done being erased." I closed the binder and stepped back. My dad finally spoke. "That's enough." But I didn't sit. "No, Dad. Enough was me nearly passing out at work and no one answering the phone. Enough was me being given 10 grand while Marissa gets 120 and a deed. Enough was being told I didn't need things because I was single. Enough is this entire table pretending that loyalty only matters when it's convenient." He started to rise, but Uncle Nathan put a hand on his arm, firmly. "Let him finish," Nathan said. I turned to the guests. "I'm not suing," I said, "yet, but I've retained counsel, and I've submitted all of this to a family mediator. There will be arbitration, and if there isn't, then there will be a courtroom." I looked at my parents. Calm. Final. And I won't be quiet about it. Then I picked up the binder, nodded to Uncle Nathan, and left the patio, leaving behind a table of stunned silence and one very uncomfortable wedding planner trying to figure out if she should continue passing out dessert. I didn't attend the wedding. The invitation sat unopened on my kitchen counter until the date passed. From what I heard later through the grapevine, the ceremony went on, but the mood was off. Half the guests were whispering about the rehearsal dinner incident, and a few of the bride's cousins even skipped the wedding after hearing what happened. Tyler's parents, who had apparently been under the impression the lake house had been in the family for generations, weren't thrilled to learn it had just been liquidated to cover a bridal suite and custom cake. Marissa posted a single photo afterward. No caption, no hashtags, no visible guests. Just her in her dress, alone, staring out at the vineyard. I didn't like it. I didn't comment. I just kept living. The mediation went forward. I had no illusions of getting the house back. But the process unearthed enough shady transactions and misrepresentations, especially around Grandpa's will, that I ended up with a hefty settlement. More than what Marissa got. Enough to pay off my medical debt, afford top-tier treatment, and put a down payment on a modest cottage upstate. One with a lake view. I never spoke to my parents again. Not out of anger. Just clarity. The door stayed open, but they never came through it. Nathan and we talk every week now. He sends me fishing updates. I send him photos of my dog, a rescued mutt named Baxter who's learned to nap in the sun exactly where Grandpa's old swing would have been. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, I sit on my little porch with a glass of ginger ale and think about that wedding toast. About what it took to get me to stand up. About how long I stayed silent just to keep the peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's erasure. And I'm not invisible anymore. Not to them. Not to me. Not ever again. I closed the binder. But I never put it away.